January 14th, 2022, video number 6. Sounds like everybody wants a hot take. I said I would get into some other topics as I got more comfortable on YouTube, but what I hear everyone telling me is that you want a hot take and you want it now. So I'm going to meet you halfway. I'm going to do a spicy subject, but a take that I personally don't think is exceptionally spicy. It is what it is. It's my lived experience. So I'll just jump right into it. We're going to talk about the jab. I am not jabbed. I don't go in for conspiracy theories about microchips or genetic manipulation, although like that stuff's interesting, and I want to hear other people's hot takes about that stuff. I don't really go in for it much myself. I don't share any of that stuff. Nothing I'm saying here is going to be medical misinformation. I am not a physician. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not a clinical medical scientist. So this is just my experience. I also don't go in for this whole hashtag pure blood stuff either. I have had a lot of jabs over the years. I've joined the Army on 2 separate occasions, and they give you a whole series of jabs when you do that. And I've some of them they made sure not to double down on, but for the most part I got a lot of those twice, whether I technically was supposed to or not. I also was in a Special Forces unit with the West Virginia National Guard, and they give you some additional jabs when you join those types of units, so I got those as well. So I'm not unjabbed, and I know the new one for the new thing, I'm going to try not to say the buzzwords, is different. I know that the new jab that they want everybody to take is different than traditional jabs, but I've had a lot of them over the years, and I'm not against them. I've worked in medical facilities, and I've always received a flu shot when I've worked in those facilities. That's pretty standard practice and has been for a long time. There are years where I haven't received a flu shot because I wasn't working in those facilities, but that's neither here nor there. I want to talk about the current jab and why I have not received it. It is not medical. It is not scientific. It is not especially partisan politics, but my choice not to get the jab is absolutely political. I don't make any bones about that. I don't pretend otherwise. I've recently discovered, as some of you who are following this channel will know, that I have some health concerns that I need to address, and I could lean on that and use that stuff as an excuse for why I haven't got the jab, but they have nothing to do with it, frankly. It's something that I now have to add into my process as I continue to navigate a society that increasingly demands that we all be jabbed, but they have nothing to do with my choice. I made it. I guess I'm constantly making it, so that's maybe a good place to start. At any point, anybody who hasn't gotten the jab can get the jab. In fact, there are literal armies of people out there prepared to give you the jab as soon as you say yay me. So it's not really like a decision that I made at one point in time and then dug my heels in. It's a decision that I'm constantly making, and maybe some of us are doing it tacitly, but I think everyone who hasn't gotten the jab, feeling awkward saying the word jab a lot, but I'm just going to have to get over that because I'm not going to say the other word. Although maybe they're screening for that too, and it's all pointless. But anyway, we can all have a little chuckle every time I say the word jab. That'll be fun. So yeah, those of us that have not been jabbed, maybe we're not thinking about it every day. Hard not to, with so many people pressing the issue, but maybe we're not, at least not the decision to not receive it. But we are, in a sense, making that decision anew every single day. So, are we conscious about it? Are we thoughtful about it? Or did we make a decision, almost a year ago and have just not changed our minds? For me, I make this decision consciously. I make it conscientiously, and I make it every week. I'm not going to necessarily say every day. It's not like I meditate on the thing, but every time it comes up, I have the opportunity to get it. Somebody asks me why I don't have it. I parse through all the information in my mind, and I decide afresh that I'm not going to get it. And it is political, but it's philosophically political. It's not partisan political. So let's go all the way back to Trump and what they call it, Operation Warp Speed. He wants this jab available to the American people, and he wants it as soon as possible. We have the now vice president very clearly saying that she would not take Trump's jab, that if he's the president when this thing rolls out, she doesn't want anything to do with it. We have other politicians and celebrities saying similar things. We even have the now president suggesting as much. His statement, I feel like, at least the one I'm thinking of, isn't as clear, but he insinuates the same thing, that if this jab becomes available and it's going to be considered Trump's jab, they're not going to take it. Well, surprise, surprise, they get elected. Their party is in power. So people, and like them, at least politically like them, now say, oh, the jab is here and the jab is great. Jabba jabba do. Everybody come get your jab. And they haven't shut up about it. And they've made all these mandates, and now we got the Supreme Court striking some of those down, and we have all these states, particularly states dominated by a certain political persuasion, that are, doing the passports and things like that. And I can't get behind any of that. And that's why I continue to choose not to be jabbed. It is not a medical choice. It is a political choice. I believe in freedom. I believe in liberty. I believe in the principles on which this country was founded. I don't believe in mandates. I don't believe in tyranny. I don't believe in coercion. It's one thing to say, oh, well, you have a choice, and then constantly find ways to socially ostracize people who don't make the choice you want. It's also, this weird thing where they say you have a choice, but they have never stopped campaigning for you and I to change our minds. They continue to waste billions of taxpayer dollars trying to convince the people who haven't received the jab to go out and get the jab. I'm not going to do it. There are cogent reasons why this level of societal pressure, particularly from the government, particularly when they are putting money that the taxpayers have paid faithfully, and laws and executive orders, particularly executive orders, when they're leaning so hard with the full apparatus at the government's disposal to more than encourage, to coerce people to receive something, I'm automatically not going to want it. I don't care if it's jabs. I mean, I guess there are like absurd things like that I would, they go bend over backwards to give me a unicorn. Like, that's pretty cool. I've never seen one of those before. I'd probably take that. But in terms of realism, when the government is exerting the kind of influence that it is to get an entire population to come on board with one thing, that's not good. That's frightening. And this fear is not like an animal fear, like a visceral fear. It's based on my own life experience. So many of you will know that when I was 17 years old, I enlisted in the Army. I shipped out to basic training on my 18th birthday, went through basic training, and then I went to get my specialty skill. For those of you that maybe aren't familiar with the military, like after you go through your initial training, you then get to figure out, or you then get to be trained as what kind of soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine you're going to be. There are all different kinds of specialty skills. Not just even mechanics, but there's different kinds of mechanics with different specialties. Not just pilots, but there's different kinds of, pilots aren't enlisted, but that's a whole nother conversation. So anyway, I was a psychological operations specialist. Now, psychological operations specialist, to some people, might sound like some kind of clinical job, like I'm in a hospital, like supporting a psychologist or a psychiatrist. That's not it at all. A psychological operations specialist is a pretty fancy, we're the good guys word for propagandist. Now, they don't like you calling yourself a propagandist when you do PSYOP, but that's exactly what you are when it comes down to it. Now, the idea as a military PSYOP, as an army PSYOP, is to manipulate foreign nationals to get on board with U.S. objectives. So the idea, and this was sort of a golden rule when I went through the training back in '99, is that this is not something that we do to the American people. You know, we're the military, we have foreign enemies, and we have foreign allies, and we have U.S. national objectives, and when we do PSYOP, we're ultimately trying to achieve U.S. national objectives. Now, it's not all sinister, right? You got kids in allied countries walking into minefields from wars that are long over and getting injured and getting killed. So a U.S. national objective would be to help keep safe and save the children of one of our allied nations. So you have PSYOP people go in there and figure out, like, well, what's causing these kids to go into these minefields? Well, they don't have, good soccer fields to play on. So they go and talk to civil engineers, and we go in and build. Sometimes it's their nation, sometimes, we spend a little foreign aid money, and that's a whole other conversation about how you feel about that. But ultimately, we go in and we help the people figure out why their kids are being maimed and killed, and then we try to convince the kids not to do that anymore. So, PSYOP doesn't have to be sinister. Information, they sometimes call it information warfare, although in this case, in the example I just gave you, it's not warfare, right? It's at all. So the idea that you use this information, that you study people and you learn the behaviors, and then you change the outcome, you change how they process what's happening so that their outcomes are different, doesn't have to be a bad thing in the example given. At the same time, you also have why don't certain people in a certain country like their leader? Well, let's find out why they don't like their leader and cause that to be more of a thing. Let's generate more suspicion. Let's make sure more people learn about, the handful of people that don't like their leader. Let's make sure more people have access to the information they have, right? And so it's manipulative. You're trying to, assuming that the United States doesn't like their leader, that's what they're doing. So it's trying to achieve U.S. national objectives. However, in the situation we're in now, we see the government and the news media in cahoots to use information warfare on the American people. And the jab is just one slice of that picture. I will talk more about psychological operations, the media functioning as a propaganda arm for the government, particularly a partisan faction of the government, in future videos. But I just kind of wanted to introduce the idea, for those of you that didn't know, that I have a background in propaganda. I'm trained by the U.S. government. So when I talk about these things, trust the experts? No, I'm not going to lean on that. But I am a subject matter expert. I've had additional education and training since that synergizes with that military training I had in propaganda. But I do know what I'm talking about. If you are a trust the experts person, you'd have a hard time making an argument against me. I guess you could trot out your own experts and have them say something different. That's why trust the experts doesn't work, by the way. At any rate, that is my background. That is how my opinions are formulated. And that is the main reason. Of course, it intersects with a lot of other, again, my preferences for things like liberty. So it intersects with that. Obviously, I'm not removed from the equation. But my awareness of how the American people are being subjected to a psychological operation, actually a series of them, on an ongoing basis. And this is not new. I've been on and on about this in my personal circles for 15 years. It became apparent to me as soon as I got trained. Actually, before I was even finished with the training, I was stunned to start to see news broadcasts, and it wasn't as widespread, or maybe I just was too novice to notice, But yeah, I mean, immediately I saw the correlations between what military psyop does to foreign nationals to get them on board with U.S. objectives to what some parts of the news media were doing on behalf of the government to American citizens. This is a huge problem. It's ongoing, it's getting worse, and I think the jab is a pretty overt place where you can see them spending effort and money to coerce U.S. citizens to perform, to change their mind in a way that a certain faction, and I think there's a partisan component to it, but we just had former President Donald Trump come out and encourage everybody to go out and get the jab. So there's a dynamic within government more so than a political party that is encouraging all of this, and I'm not comfortable with it. I'm anti-authority, straight up. We can talk more about that in another video too. So different topics are coming up in this. I'm going to make notes of all those things and circle back around to do them. But I heard demands for a hot take. I hear you saying, all right, Mac, you've done some videos. We're concerned about your health. We're glad you're getting healthy, but we want more of the content that we get on Microbius americanae. And I get it. I hear you. I am listening. So this is your first one. Video number 6 in the bank. Thanks for tuning in.